people are asking me what some of the things are that I'm looking for in 2015 that I've been talking about so much. And one of those things that I'm looking at is internationally. I'm looking very closely at that. Now, you know that I have done that now for a while. I've been looking at the global macroeconomics, and I'm going to continue to do that. And what I have found is that pretty much by the grace of God, the global outlook that I've had and been talking about and have predicted, not predictions coming out of nowhere, but predictions based on the numbers that I've been seeing have been pretty much right on the money, particularly as it relates to the Eurozone and China. And I think that one of the things that I'm looking for in 2015 is the solidifying of those numbers, obviously, and to continue to look at the global picture as best as I possibly can. Now, why is that important? It's important because it's kind of crazy to think that we can be totally isolated on this island called the United States of America and not have and not be affected by what is happening globally. I'll give you an example. Last month, as we saw some numbers coming in reference to inflation and deflation, the deflation was continuing. When we looked at our import numbers, the prices that we are paying for products that are imported from other nations, it was down 2.5%. That's a significant drop. Nobody talked about it other than me the day they came out, but that was a significant decrease. Well, look, 2.5% is significant because their prices are already depressed. Why do we see deflation in these markets and here in America? Because consumers, people are not buying the goods and the services that they are producing. Obviously, if that continues, they're out of business, right? So when we look at that 2.5% decrease, it is for the main reason of enticing American consumers to buy those products, meaning their economy is not thriving, they're struggling, and they need all the help they can get. When we look at our export prices were down 1.3%. We're doing the same thing on the other side of the ocean. So, look, this is a very important factor. There's no getting around it. The other thing is when we look at the bailouts that have to be done, we're going to, when we see UE starting quantitative easing and we look at those bailouts, that is nothing. It pales in comparison to the $4 trillion, over $4 trillion that the Federal Reserve has done in America. And when you look at the EU, and people forget this all the time, I remind people of this on a regular basis. We always speak of America being this huge economy. It is big, but it is not as big as the Eurozone. The number one economy is the Eurozone when you combine all the nations. It's also the number one market, the number one area in which China exports product to. Now, people say, well, China can't afford to hurt America because if China hurts America, it's going to hurt them. Look, that is true. No doubt about it. We buy a lot of their goods. But the Eurozone is even more important to them. And the Eurozone is suffering dramatically if you're wondering why China is hurting so bad. So we're going to continue to see this pain and this hurt coming out of China for an extended period of time until the Eurozone gets their act together. Now, is that going to happen in 2015? I don't believe it is. Maybe there is a slight possibility if the economy or the economies can get this far, I would say possibly by the end December of 2015 this year, but I don't even think that's too likely. There's a lot of work they have to do. And there's a lot of work here in America that we have to do as well. So that's why I'm looking at some of those, why I think that's so important. We cannot be exempt from that. We cannot say, hey, let them suffer, we're doing fine. It's not going to work that way. We will have to participate, if we haven't already in some way, shape, or form, into bailing out and supporting those systems, because it's going to mean a lot for the global economy. So there's some of the things that we have to look at. I'd like to speak about, over the upcoming days, I'd like to be talking about some of the things that we are expecting, that I'm expecting here at Financial Issues. But one of the biggest issues that I've been wrestling with, and I'm going to continue to do so, is what's going to happen at the end of this first quarter, where we are going to be economically, and where we are going to be in the markets. Now, we have seen an incredibly volatile market, but listen, we saw one last year as well, and I don't think this year is going to be any different. I think it's going to be a little bit more violent, in that the swings on the upside and the downside may be a little bit more severe. But the question is this the time to be in or out of the market? Now, one thing that never happens in markets is, if you have a broker, or there are brokers out there that are managing hundreds of millions of dollars, that are not going to say, that call I made 2 months ago, it was wrong. I've changed my mind because the conditions or the numbers being reported have changed. I've changed my mind. Sell all that. Let's go to cash. They're not going to do that. I happen to think that's very sad, because there's an awful lot of people that are going to be hurt as a result of that. But they can't hurt their own business, so they're not going to do that. Someone said to me in New York not long ago at a meeting, you're losing credibility when you do that. Speaking, and this person was speaking of me directly. You're losing credibility when you do that. And my response to him was, no, you're losing credibility when you don't do that. I'm gaining credibility because I'm willing to call things as I see it on a regular basis. Everybody out there, meaning all of you, are smart, smart enough to understand that we are living in economic cycles that are changing constantly. What would only stand to reason, since those economic cycles help determine some of our strategies and attitudes moving forward, that they would also continue to determine them both on the upside and the downside, and that it's an ever-changing environment. And I believe that we have to be ever-changing to try to keep pace with that as best we can. Now, there are some areas in which we'll stay strong and steady as she goes, and we won't make any changes. But there are other areas that we've got to make some changes when that calls for it. I believe that this year is a very volatile year. We are quickly approaching 70 years since Israel has been in the land. The Bible speaks of that. I think we are in for some exciting times as far as the work of the Lord here on earth, and I'm excited about that. I believe that protecting God's money is important, but not as important as protecting our hearts and our souls, and protecting our families and encouraging them to be walking now with the Lord. But I'll say this. As we think of those things, the one thing I am certain about is, if we have, I want you all to understand, because this is extremely important. I am not working to try to predict the day, the week, the month when we are going to see an economic Armageddon in this country. I'm I am not trying to predict that, because here's the deal with that. I really don't care that much about that. First of all, I hope it comes after the Lord has taken us. But more importantly, understand this, that if we have a total collapse in the global financial economic systems, you and I are going to do nothing about that. I don't care what we do to try to protect. We're not going to protect that. There is going to have to be a massive global reset, and it's probably going to be in the form of a one world currency that's going to usher in a one world government. We know how the story ends. I'm not trying to protect against that. And I think that we all would be a little bit foolish to protect against that, try to protect against that, because it's going to be very difficult to do. But I will say this, we can protect ourselves from the effects of that. We can do things like work to get out of debt. We can do things to save and store some things like water, like food, not for years, but enough to get us by for somewhat of a short, extended period of time. That we can look now from a financial perspective at hard assets, land, agricultural land in particular, gold, silver, some hard assets. I don't think the gold and silver are something I personally am going to spend a lot of money on. I'd rather own the land, but nonetheless, because my question is, I'm not sure of the purpose that it's going to hold for us, other than it's going to be up dramatically in value. But will the governments artificially and suppress the value of that gold for obvious reasons that they might need? Or is it going to be illegal to trade or sell by the average person unless it's selling directly to a central bank, in which we may have to take whatever price they give us? So I'm not overly optimistic about that, but we need to have some hard assets. And getting out of debt and keeping hard assets that we own, like our home and land, is going to be critically important. And I think that's far more important in that environment than anything else. But what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to help you with, is that severe depression, not necessarily this economic Armageddon where we have this massive reset, but a severe recession, depression. I'm trying to protect against that, and I want us to protect our assets against that. And they're the kinds of strategies that I'm trying to think about as we move forward, and we're going to continue to do that. It is critically important that you tell your friends, your relatives, everybody you know, to stay tuned with the truth that I pray by the grace of God and through God is coming through this ministry of financial issues, because I think it's incredibly important that we have a decisive voice that can guide us and lead us. And I don't want to be, I want to be that voice because I've asked God to allow that, and I hope it is. But I don't have any other agenda, and I think that lends itself to some of the credibility to be that voice.